beautiful, with an air of elegance and mystery. Her long, dark hair framed her face, and her eyes were a striking shade of violet. She wore an ornate gown embroidered with gold threads, and walked with a regal grace that caught the attention of everyone around. Ryder, however, barely looked up from his work. Beauty was something he'd never been impressed by. He preferred function over form, machines over appearances. Princess Kalina's arrival caused a stir among the humans who worked at the spaceport. They all gawked at her, eager to impress and gain favor with the daughter of the powerful emperor. Ryder, however, was indifferent. He focused on the ship in front of him, determined to finish his task. He could feel the eyes of others on him, whispering behind his back. Why isn't he paying attention? They must have wondered. Ryder didn't care. He wasn't interested in playing the game. His job was to fix ships, not to entertain royalty. Kalina walked past the mechanics and the workers, her expression unreadable. She had expected to be treated with awe and admiration, as she always had been. But here, among the humans, she was met with something different. A few people exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to behave. Others simply went about their work, as if she were just another person passing through. This reaction was not what she had anticipated. The Emperor had always told her that her beauty was a gift, a tool to manipulate and influence others. But here, it seemed, beauty meant nothing. As Kalina walked past Ryder, she couldn't help but notice that he didn't look up from his work. She stopped in her tracks, a frown forming on her face. Was this man completely indifferent to her presence? "Excuse me," Kalina said, her voice gentle but firm. Ryder finally looked up, his face still covered in oil and grease. He didn't seem surprised to see her, nor did he seem particularly impressed by her royal attire. "Yes?" Ryder asked, wiping his hands on his rag and glancing at her with mild curiosity. "Are you going to greet me?" Catalina asked, her voice tinged with the faintest hint of annoyance. She was used to everyone around her bowing and paying their respects, but Ryder didn't seem to care at all. Ryder blinked. "I'm a mechanic," he said simply. "I'm not here to greet anyone. I'm here to fix things." He motioned to the ship behind him. "That ship isn't going to fix itself." Kalina was taken aback. She had expected to be treated like royalty, as she always had been. But Ryder's nonchalant response was different from anything she had experienced before. Instead of admiration, she was met with indifference. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at him more closely. "You're a mechanic?" she asked, surprised. "You don't seem impressed by my appearance." Ryder glanced at her and shrugged. "I've worked on ships for years. I've seen plenty of things, beautiful and ugly. But beauty doesn't change a ship's engine. If you want something fixed, I can help. If not, you're welcome to leave." Kalina blinked, a mix of confusion and intrigue forming in her expression. He wasn't reacting like the others. He wasn't interested in her beauty. He was more interested in the ship, in the work, in something that wasn't tied to status or appearance. She had never met someone like him before. "I wasn't expecting to be dismissed so quickly," Kalina said, her tone softer now, though still tinged with a hint of her royal upbringing. She had never been treated this way. Ryder stood up, wiping his hands on the rag one last time before tossing it into a nearby bin. "No offense," he said, "but I don't have time for games. I've got work to do." For a moment, Kalina was speechless. She had never met anyone so uninterested in her presence. It was both frustrating and refreshing. She had grown used to people treating her with deference, but Ryder treated her like anyone else. Perhaps even less than anyone else. Kalina stood there for a few moments longer, unsure of what to do. She wasn't used to being ignored, and yet something about Ryder's indifference felt different. Like he didn't care about the things that everyone else valued. "I'm just here to be a joke," Kalina said, finally speaking again, her voice firmer than before. The Emperor sent me here to test the humans, to see if they can appreciate true beauty. Ryder raised an eyebrow. Test? Beauty? I'm not interested in tests or games. I'm just a mechanic. I fix things. He motioned to the ship again, his expression serious. Now, if you're done, I've got work to do. Kalina blinked, trying to process what he was saying. It was clear that Ryder wasn't interested in playing her father's game, but perhaps, Catalina thought, that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe this human mechanic was the one person who could see her for who she really was, not just a princess, not just a beautiful face, but someone with real talents and skills that had been hidden away by her royal life. As Ryder turned back to the ship, Catalina stood there for a moment longer, watching him. She didn't understand why he was so uninterested in her, but she felt a strange sense of admiration for him. Maybe, just maybe, this mechanic would be the one who could see past her beauty and treat her as something more. Ryder didn't know it yet, but this encounter was just the beginning of something much bigger, something that would change both of their lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The days following Kalina's arrival were a blur for Ryder. Every morning he continued his work at the spaceport, fixing ships, handling engines, and doing what he did best. But something had changed. Every time he looked up, Kalina was there, watching him, standing a little further away each time. It wasn't the kind of attention he was used to. People generally either ignored him or acted like he was some sort of servant. Kalina, however, was different. She never asked for his help. She never demanded his attention. But she kept coming back. At first, Ryder assumed she was just curious. Maybe she wanted to see how a human mechanic worked. After all, royalty didn't often get to see the real work that went into the technology they took for granted. Kalina seemed fascinated, but not in the way that others were. She wasn't interested in his skill because he was human, or because he worked on a starship. She was interested in him as a person. The next time she approached him, Ryder was working on a freighter that had come in for an engine upgrade. Kalina stepped forward, looking over his shoulder as he adjusted a series of wires. "You know," she said, "I've never seen anyone work like you." Ryder didn't stop what he was doing but glanced at her briefly. "I'm just fixing a ship. It's what I do." "I don't mean just fixing ships," she said. "I mean how—" "You do it. You focus so completely. It's like the world doesn't exist outside of this." Ryder nodded, focusing again on the task at hand. "That's the way it works. You can't afford distractions when you're fixing something this complicated. Everything has to be in place, every little detail." Kalina stepped a little closer, intrigued. "I didn't know mechanics worked like this. I thought it was all about tools and parts. But it's more than that, isn't it?" Ryder paused, wiping the sweat from his brow. "It's about the work, not the tools. The tools are just a means to an end. The real challenge is understanding the problem. Getting into the machine's mind, almost. That's how you know what needs to be done." Catalina looked at him, something in her eyes that Ryder couldn't quite place. She had spent her whole life in the royal court, surrounded by luxury and power, yet she was fascinated by something so simple as working on a starship engine. "I never knew," she said softly, almost to herself. "I never knew how much went into something like this." Ryder shrugged, his hands still moving with practiced precision. "It's just what I do. I'm not the one you want to impress. You should be talking to the engineers or the leaders." Catalina didn't seem to care about that. "I don't care about impressing anyone," she said quietly, a hint of frustration creeping into her voice. "That's what I've been doing my whole life, trying to impress people with what I am, with how I look. But none of them ever looked at me like you do." Ryder looked up then, finally noticing the tone in her voice. She wasn't speaking with the usual confidence of royalty. There was something else, something more vulnerable. "And how is that?" he asked, genuinely curious. She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Like I'm a symbol. Like I'm only valuable because of how I look, or because I'm the Emperor's daughter. But that's not who I am. I don't want to be a symbol. I just want to be me."
Ryder didn't know what to say to that. It wasn't his problem.
She was royalty. She had everything. Or so it seemed. But the way she spoke, it was clear that there was a part of her that was more than just the beautiful face and regal title. It wasn't something he had expected. And it wasn't something he knew how to deal with. "I don't know how to help you with that," he said finally. "I'm just a mechanic. I don't play games."
"I don't do royalty." Kalina gave a small, almost sad smile. "I know, but maybe there's more to me than you think."
"I didn't come here just to be a joke writer. I came here to find something real, something that wasn't just about my title." Ryder took a deep breath and went back to work, his mind spinning. Kalina wasn't like anyone he'd ever met. Her beauty wasn't the only thing that stood out about her. There was something more beneath that. He wasn't sure what it was, but it made him feel like he was seeing her for the first time, not as the Emperor's daughter, but as someone who was struggling with her own identity. Over the next few days, their interactions became more frequent. Kalina would stop by Ryder's work area almost every day, not saying much at first, just watching him work. She would ask questions, simple ones at first, about the tools he used or the ships he worked on. As time went on, however, the questions grew more personal. She asked about his life, about his past, about why he had chosen to work in a spaceport rather than pursuing something more prestigious. And as she spoke, Ryder found himself opening up in ways he hadn't expected. He told her about his humble beginnings, about how he had learned the trade from his father, who had been a mechanic before him. He spoke about his frustrations, about how people always overlooked him because he was just a worker, just a man who fixed things. Kalina listened intently, her eyes not on him in the way others did, but with a deep interest, as if she truly cared about his story. It made Ryder uncomfortable. He wasn't used to attention, especially not from someone like her, someone who had lived a life of luxury, of power, who had never had to struggle for anything. Yet she seemed so real, so down to earth in a way he didn't expect. One afternoon, Ryder was deep in the belly of a large freighter, replacing some damaged wiring, when Kalina approached him. He had his back turned and didn't hear her approach until she was standing beside him, looking down at the ship's engine. "Do you mind if I help?" she asked, her voice soft. Ryder looked up, surprised.
"You've never done this before."
She shrugged.
"I know the basics. I've been studying."
"My father never let me actually work on ships, but I've always understood them. I know more than people think." Ryder wasn't sure whether to laugh or be impressed. "You want to work on this?" he asked. "It's not exactly a delicate operation." "You sure you're ready?"
"I've been studying for years," Kalina replied, her voice more determined than before.
"I can handle it." Ryder stood back, letting her take the tools. He watched as she carefully worked on the wires, her movements careful and deliberate. She was surprisingly good, her hands steady as she worked. It was clear she wasn't just pretending. She knew what she was doing, and for the first time Ryder felt a flicker of respect for her. Not as a princess, not as the Emperor's daughter, but as someone who was trying to be more than just her title. They worked together in silence for a while, Ryder occasionally offering guidance, but mostly just observing. He had never seen someone so focused, so determined to prove themselves. It was refreshing. Kalina wasn't just interested in impressing him. She was interested in learning. And in that moment, Ryder realized that she was far more than what people saw on the surface. When the task was complete, Catalina stood back and wiped her hands on a rag.
"How did I do?"
Ryder gave her a small, approving smile. Not bad. You've got potential. Kaylina beamed at the praise, her eyes shining with something Ryder hadn't seen before. Pride, not in her appearance, but in what she had achieved. She wasn't just the Emperor's daughter. She was more than that. I guess I'm not just a joke after all, she said quietly, more to herself than to him. Ryder nodded. Yeah, I guess you're not. For the first time, Ryder didn't see Kaylina as royalty. He saw her as someone who was finally starting to find her own way. And in that moment, he realized that maybe he wasn't the only one who had to prove something. The days grew warmer as Ryder and Kaylina continued working together. Their bond, initially forged out of curiosity, had deepened into something neither of them had expected. Ryder had come to respect Kaylina for her skills and determination. She was no longer just the Emperor's daughter, a symbol of power and beauty. She was a person, a fellow mechanic, someone who had the same passion for technology and innovation. And Kaylina, in turn, had come to admire Ryder, his no-nonsense approach to life, his humility despite his talents, and his ability to see beyond her title had made her feel like she finally belonged somewhere. However, even as they grew closer, the reality of their positions loomed over them. Kaylina had tried to push it aside, but it was always there in the back of her mind. She was the Emperor's daughter, a princess in a galaxy where power and beauty were currency. Ryder, on the other hand, was just a mechanic, a worker. There were lines they couldn't cross, lines that the universe and her father would never allow them to cross. One afternoon, as they worked on a new ship that had arrived for an overhaul, the tension between them was palpable. Ryder was crouched beneath the ship, rewiring a control panel, while Kaylina stood beside him, holding a tool in her hand. She had been quiet for a while, her usual curiosity and conversation absent. Ryder glanced up at her, noticing the shift in her mood. "Everything okay?" he asked, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Kaylina didn't answer immediately. She was looking out across the spaceport, her expression distant. Finally, she turned to him, her face clouded with uncertainty. "I can't stay here forever," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of something unspoken. "I know my father expects me to return soon. He won't understand why I've stayed. He'll see it as a failure on his part."
I'm supposed to be a symbol, Ryder. A symbol of beauty, of power.
But I don't want that anymore. Ryder paused his work and sat back, looking up at her. He had always known this moment would come. She couldn't stay forever. She had responsibilities, a kingdom, a life far removed from the rough hands-on work they did here. But hearing her voice, the truth made it all the more real. Ryder felt a pang in his chest, a mix of sympathy and frustration.
I understand, he said after a moment, his voice quiet. You've got your duty. Your father won't let you just walk away from that.
Kaylina nodded, her eyes distant. He won't. But I don't belong there.
I never have. I don't want to be a pawn in his games anymore.
I want to choose my own path, my own future. Ryder sighed, looking back at the wires in front of him.
I can't tell you what to do. It's your life, Kaylina.
But I can tell you one thing. You've got more skills than most people realize. More than your father will ever know. You're not just a pretty face, and you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. If you want to build things, fix ships, do something real, you can. You've got the talent.
You've got the drive.
She smiled, but it was a sad, wistful smile.
I'm not sure I can escape at all. My father's expectations are too great.
He's already planning my future. It's already written.
Ryder shook his head. That's not the way it has to be.
Your future is yours to decide. You don't have to follow anyone's plan. Maybe you don't have to be the Emperor's daughter anymore. Maybe you can be something more. Kaylina's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but I don't know how to break free.
I've been living in this world my whole life. I don't know anything else.
Ryder stood up, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. Maybe that's the first step, realizing you don't have to stay in that world. There's a whole universe out there, Kalina. A universe full of opportunities. And you've already started to see it. You've been fixing ships, building things. Maybe that's just the beginning. Kalina looked at him, her gaze steady. But what about you? What about your life, Ryder? Don't you have plans? Dreams? Ryder hesitated. He hadn't really thought about it before. His life had always been about the work, fixing ships, earning a living. But something about Kalina's question made him realize that maybe there was more to life than just surviving. Maybe he had dreams he hadn't even considered. He glanced at Kalina, unsure of what to say. I guess I never really thought about it. I've been too busy to think about anything else, but I'm not the one who has to escape. I'm just here. I fix things, help people. That's enough for me. Kalina reached out, placing a hand on his arm. Her touch was light, but it sent a shiver through him. You don't have to be just here, Ryder. You don't have to stay in one place your whole life. Ryder looked down at her hand, and for the first time in a long time he felt conflicted. He wanted to believe in the future Kalina was talking about, a future where they could both escape their respective roles. But reality was more complicated than dreams. He knew it. G knew it. I can't leave this, he said quietly, gesturing to the ships and the spaceport around them. This is all I know. This is where I belong. Kalina sighed, stepping back. Maybe we both have more to figure out than we thought. The quiet that followed felt heavy, filled with the weight of the unspoken. Ryder went back to his work, trying to focus on the task in front of him, but Kalina's words lingered in his mind. Maybe he didn't have to stay here forever. Maybe there was something more for him, too. Later that day, as Ryder worked into the evening, Kalina approached him again. This time, there was a look of determination in her eyes. Ryder, she said, her voice firm. I've made up my mind. I'm not going back to my father. I can't. I won't be a symbol anymore. I won't be what he wants me to be. I want to build things. I want to do something real. And I'm going to do it, no matter what. Ryder looked up at her, surprised by the fire in her voice. She had made a decision. She wasn't going to let her father control her life anymore. And in that moment, Ryder felt a surge of admiration for her. Are you sure? He asked, his voice cautious. It's not going to be easy. Your father won't just let you go. Kalina nodded. I know. But I'm not going to live my life in fear anymore. I want to be free, Ryder. I want to do what makes me happy, and that means leaving all this behind. Ryder stood there, his heart racing. She was serious. She wasn't going back. She was choosing her own path, and for the first time in his life, Ryder realized that he didn't want her to do it alone. I'm with you, he said, his voice steady. Whatever happens, I'm with you. Kalina smiled, her eyes softening as she looked at him. Thank you, Ryder. I didn't think I could do this on my own. But now I think we can both find something more, something better. As they stood there, side by side, the stars above them seemed to shine a little brighter. For the first time, Ryder felt like his life had purpose, beyond just fixing ships. Maybe, just maybe, he and Kalina could build a future together, one that wasn't controlled by the past. And for Kalina, the future was no longer just a shadow of her father's expectations. It was something new, something all her own.